Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're going to be finishing out episode 8, part 2 of the coaster and the monorail build. So let's check this out. Okay, so I've gotten all the shaper sheet done for the hill, right, that we're going to be doing for the roller coaster, right? So it kind of goes outside the perimeter of it. And then over here it expands out. Now there'll be a ride that's going to go right here, a little kiddie ride. All the mounds around the posts have been done. And then what I did here with the platform is I really sort of melded the platform into the rock, right? So it looks like this, instead of like, because remember I had to cut those stairs in half there to make that turn. So instead what I did is I actually made it look like they built it right into the rock, right? Then I don't have to put supports underneath it. I don't need like something in the back here because the rock comes up and seals it off there. So it turns out really well, right, from this side. And you know, underneath the platform it's just going to be ground cover and stuff like that to take up all that space. On this side of the platform, you can see I sort of did a little indentation here, which is where we'll put the pond. So we'll talk about how we're going to accomplish that a little bit later. But you can see for the most part everything else is finished. And we're ready for paint. So that's our next step. We're just going to get this all painted, just like we did the other stuff. And then we'll show you what we're going to do as far as the painting of the pond goes and everything like that. So let me go grab the paints and we'll get that started. So that's step 2 there. You can see I have it all painted, sort of in that camouflage, right? But that's kind of how it looks. And then for the lake, what I did is I painted the inside pretty much like a mossy green, and if you can see sort of on the edges I mixed in some brown, right, sort of like dirt or mud going into the lake, right? So now we won't fill the whole thing up completely because that would take a lot of material, but we'll let this dry first. This is one thing we do have to let dry before we pour in the realistic water, because we don't want it doing some weird mixing thing and fogging it. So we're going to let that dry completely overnight for that portion of it. But the rest of this we can get all the ground cover on and get this all taken care of underneath the platform and all this stuff. Alright, so there you can see sort of the finished product, right? You guys have seen this before, but... And then over here on the big mound coming across, right, for the coaster. It's all ready to go. So now we're ready to actually put the coaster in its final position. So what we're going to do is on the little areas that are around the base of the coaster that are still exposed on the foam, we'll put just small pieces of grass mat. We don't need to cover the whole thing and waste it. So we'll fill those in first. Then we'll put the coaster in place. We'll probably just do like 2 dabs of hot glue on the bottom. That's it. Doesn't need much. And then run the wiring down through some of the holes I pre-drilled. And then we can blend the coaster in to the surrounding ground cover. So the coaster, this part turned out really nice. So I like the way it looks like it's embedded into the rock on the side of the hill. So it's much better than just a plain plastic, 4 posts sitting there on the flat layout. So, and here I just did I took some of the foam pieces that were in the fast track switches that hold them in, and I just glued a couple together and made a wall right here. We'll paint this like concrete or something, so that'll be the wall that sort of keeps the people from falling off as they're walking up the pathway up to the coaster and everything. So that's a lot more work still there, but our main goal was to get all this ground cover on and all these the shaper sheet in place and everything. So now we're ready to actually mount the coaster over here. We pre-drilled a couple of holes for the wiring and stuff, and what we're going to do is fill in some of the spots, like in the back here. The foam is still going to show because the coaster doesn't cover there, so we'll put some mats there, cut some slips of grass mat. And we can use it a couple different colors. We can use some browns and greens and mix them together there, because they're all going to be blended together then eventually. So, but we'll get those down first, then we're ready to mount the coaster in its permanent position. And then once it's there, we can start blending it into the surrounding area. So, and we'll show you how we're going to do that. All right, so now that the coaster's in, we are going to make a few little improvements to it. So the coaster, when it comes you know, from Coaster Dynamics, right here where you see this little fencing happening and everything, there's a giant power supply and all kinds of modules and wires jammed in there, and it's really kind of ugly, right? So what I did is I cut it all out and I ran these feeder wires instead underneath the layout. So now the power supply and everything is underneath the layout. This big giant power supply here and this little module which is on the side right here, you can't barely see it, it's a little black thing right there, but those are all up inside there with wiring and everything, and the problem with that is it's really ugly, so I moved it all underneath the layout. Problems with the ride is there's no way for the people to get up into the coaster, so I made some modifications. So I have this walkway that's going up into the coaster, and right here I'm going underneath the rails, right? That's going to be the entrance. You can see I kind of painted a sidewalk underneath the coaster that's going to go in the back there, and it's going to go to the back of this building. Now I've got half of it off right now, and I'm going to show you what I'm doing with the rest of the building. And then once it's all together, it's going to make it look like the, you know, people enter under the coaster in the back, and then there's going to be two doorways in the back, one entrance and one exit, where they go up to the top to get to the platform and then back down to get to the coaster. So let me show you how I'm going to enhance that a little bit. This is the piece that goes on the back. It you know, basically goes vertical. So what I did is I cut two doorways out of the back here, right, and I just put an exit and enter sign on them. So that's where the sidewalk's going to come up to in the back. So it's going to look like people are filing in and out of there. And then on the front here, what I did is I added two LEDs in the back here to light this up. And then you can see all the people I added up the top here, including an attendant right here. And then I added this little fence in the front here because that wasn't there before either. And that, you know, keeps the people from falling off onto the tracks, right? So this is kind of what it looks like. So let me go put it on the layout. I just have to run these wires through for the LEDs, and then I'll show you what it kind of the final effect looks like. And this is just, you know, something just to enhance the coaster dynamics, make it look a little more realistic. All right, we've got everything completed at this point for the first two rides, which are the coaster and the Kiddie rocket ship ride. So let's take a tour of everything that we've done so far. Of course, we have the Cyclone coaster, and you know, we raised it up onto that sort of hill using foam and the shaper sheet, and you can see here I've got the coaster sort of, it's all blended into the surrounding ground, right? So we'll take a look at it from the back, but it looks like it's been built right on the hill. And then over here we have the platform where you get on the coaster. Now what I did here is I added a couple LEDs underneath there. I also added the fencing around it, which wasn't there, and then all the figures. And then that's what sort of the front of it looks like. Down here, what I did is I put a sign here, Cyclone entrance, as you can see right there. And I have a line of people going in underneath the coaster, and they go around back into the entrance. So let me show you that. Was replaced, you know, when I had all the power supply and everything was back here. So after I pulled that out, what I did is I cut some holes in the back of the platform there, and I did an enter and exit for people to get in and out. So they would go in there, go up the stairs, right up to the platform. And then you can see I've got some people lined up as they come in underneath the coaster there, and I just put a fence around it, right? And that's pretty much it. And all I did was paint that area concrete color. Just taped it off and painted it concrete, and then I just put the ground cover around it. You can see on the back here, got all the ground cover going to the back of the Cyclone here. Again, it just sort of looks like it all blends in, so looks really good. I stuck some skinny trees back here so the monorail could get by it, but the more trees you have, the better. It always looks better with lots of trees. This is the one end of the coaster. I put a couple trees down here also, but there's a nice little sort of alcove right here we can put a ride in. Okay, there you can kind of see the overhead view of it. So it's all blended into the scenery. Alright, and then what I did is over here, remember I talked about having a pathway that's going to come off. So This is again just a graduated pathway that sort of comes up, right? Goes up to that upper level sort of, and then it breaks off here. So we've got the Kiddie rocket ship ride right here. This is another Coaster Dynamics ride. And again, I did the same thing. I put the power supply underneath the layout instead of on top. And we just have a couple of, we put some figures in here. People waiting to get on the ride. There's an attendant right there. Lady taking pictures, right? And then we've got some people waiting in line for the Cyclone. And I put, some street lamps here and there. And then over here I just put a couple of park benches and some people sitting. And in the background, this was all just area. Couldn't really do much with because of the monorail, track, but just filled that in. And then back here is where we put the little pond. Now, I literally just poured this realistic water, so this is going to take a long time to drive. Now I have a pretty deep, and you're only supposed to do it like an eighth at a time, so I have way too much in there. So that's going to take a long time to drive, so we'll have to come back to that later, but that's kind of where we're at. And that's how you get up to the Kiddie ride right here. Wall here that I created out of that foam, I just painted it in concrete color, so it looks pretty good. And then I just created a sign here, Cyclone Kiddie rocket ship ride entrance, right? And glued it to the wall. So they'll come around this entrance here and then go up the walkway and then up to the rides. You can see underneath the monorail platform, I just made it so it looks like they sort of built the platform into the hill, which worked out really well because it hides a lot of the edges of the stairways here that I had to cut and everything to make this turn, right? So it looks like it's actually built right on the hill. Looks really good. Turned out much better than I thought it was going to do. And then underneath it, I have varying, layers of mounds that go up and down underneath it to make it look like an actual hill. So we'll take a look at it from the other side, but that's kind of what I did there. On the top here, I put some fencing around it because there was none originally on the one that comes from Disney. So I put fencing around it to make so that people couldn't jump off. And then I put a whole bunch of figures on the top there, some seated figures, some standing figures, and of course I have the Woodland Scenics light posts on here too. The other thing I got was I needed a way to stop the monorail from going off the edge here since it's point to point. So again, 3D printing to the rescue. I just have these 3D printed bumpers which slide right onto the mounting post. So I put one of those at each end, so that kind of stops it from falling off the edge. Okay, and and then I put the same fencing on the other side and figures and things like that. So the monorail platform looks really good, and between all the scenery and everything that goes around it, it turned out really well. Put a couple of trees. Like I said, the more trees, the better. And even small trees, like you can get trees that are made for like HO, like this little tree right back here, but it looks sort of like a bush when you put it on a hill and stuff like that. So, and the Kiddie rocket ship ride is pretty cool. It has some fencing around it that looks really nice. And I put this little Woodland Scenic strip, edging strips around it, and then blended it into the ground. So. And then on the outside hill, just because this is a hill here, I put a hedge along that so people wouldn't fall off the hill, basically, right? And then on the wall, just for fun, I just put some kids hanging their feet off the wall, sitting on the wall. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's take a look at it from the other side. But that's really this main section here with these two new rides. Now, of course, the monorail goes all the way across over there, back to that contemporary hotel that we showed you before in the first part of the video, and of course then the neon signs at the top. So that will need a whole nother scene back there, but we'll get to that later. So that's not our main focus right now. What the underneath looks like of the platform, so works out really well there. And then of course I did this little sort of pond area right here. Now I just poured this. It's going to take This is actually going to take a couple weeks to dry, and the reason is because you're only supposed to pour 1/8 inch at a time, and I poured a whole bunch, right? It's fairly deep. I wanted to make it more shallow, but you know, I forgot about it, and then I made it too deep, and then of course I poured it. Now what's going to happen is these little bubbles will all disappear. This sort of auto levels by itself, but it'll slowly cure over a couple weeks time, and as it cures it'll start to gel up. So what I'll do once it starts gelling up is that's when I usually stick in cattails and things like that in the actual water, right, around the edges or even in the middle, right, to make it look like a, you know, a murky pond or something like that. The color it's going to dry is going to be different than what you're seeing here. This looks more bluish right now, but of course I painted the underside green, and it's going to get very dark once it starts drying. But like I said, because I didn't do the recommended instructions, which is really just 1/8 inch at a time, this is going to take a long time to dry. But it's in sort of a bathtub of this shaper sheet, so it can't leak through or go anywhere, and eventually it will dry, but for right now we just got to let it sit. And every day I'll just come down and check it, and when it gets to a tacky jelly point, that's when I'll put the cattails and things like that inside in the water itself, and then along the edges and things like that. So that's kind of where that stands, but that'll take a little longer to get through that whole process. And yeah, and that's pretty much it for these first 2 rides. So let's take a look at them operating. All right, so there you can see the, we'll zoom in a little bit, but there you can see the Kiddie ship rocket ride. It's a really cool one. And then of course you have the Cyclone. So Cyclone's pretty cool. I did put figures in the coaster, right? It doesn't come with figures, so I got the seated figures, and the best ones to get for the rides, for the coaster dynamic rides, are the Lionel figures, seated figures that are made for passenger cars. They're shrunken down just a hair from a normal size, and they are sort of rubber flexible, and they fit perfect in all these rides. So those are the ones you want to use if you want to get some figures for these coaster dynamic rides. But it, you know, works really well. Seeing all the figures in there, because obviously empty rides look kind of dumb. This coaster has these sort of chasing lights that go up the hill there, and the Cyclone sign itself blinks on and off, so it's pretty cool. And you may not notice it now. I'll turn the lights down, but in the little platform here, there's 2 LEDs, you know, overhead that light up that whole section. So yeah, those are our first 2 rides, and of course then we had our hotel in the back here, right? All lit up there, and then our you know, sign on the top, of course. So let me just turn the lights down a little bit. You can get an idea of what it kind of looks like in the dark. So you can see when I turn the lights down a little bit, you know, we've got all these like cool street lights lit up here, which look really good. I don't have the lights all the way down, but you know, and then you've got the Cyclone here. Now if you look here, you can see this is all lit up underneath here for the park goers who are getting ready to get on the coaster. So you know, those chasing lights are actually super bright, especially in the dark, but they're kind of cool. Yeah, and then of course you've got the hotel in the back here. So, and that is our first phase. So that's the first 2 rides now. And now what we're going to do is, in the front here where you see all this blank space, this is where we can now add a whole bunch of rides. Biggest first, right? Like the Scrambler's a huge ride. So we'll start organizing that and laying them out, you know, kind of how they're going to work. But in this part on the bottom here, in general, it's going to be fairly flat, right? Now, I will be doing a couple of those little things like I did on the hobo camp where I raise it up to meet the platform of those little Lionel accessories, you know, that have the bases on them. But besides that, for the most part, it's going to be fairly flat. I'm not going to do any major mountains or hills or anything like that. That's what this back part here is for. And then, of course, we're going to clean this whole thing up on the front here with the parking lot. This will all be repainted, filled in, and fixed. We'll get some kind of entrance here. We got ticket booths and things like that we're going to put there. So the next phase will be, you know, kind of laying out all the rides all the way over to the track that runs through the middle of the park. So we're going to see how many we can squeeze on here. And we do have a lot. But I think we can get most of them on, and hopefully it'll all work out. Alright guys, well that's going to end it for today's video. That's the end of episode 8. We got the coaster, we got the monorail, and we got the rocket ship Kiddie ride in. So we got 3 things down so far. And we got all that core stuff in the background finished, so that's pretty cool. Turned out really well. And the next video is going to be even more exciting, because now we're really going to be able to put a lot of rides right in front of the coaster there and just sort of lay everything out. So that'll be a lot of fun. So hope you come back for that video. So as always, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, put your comments down below. And as always, I will see you guys next time. Peace, guys.